Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Early Childhood State of the State presentation for summer 2024. My name is Erin Carroll. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Early Childhood at the VDOE, and I'm excited to be with you all today to share some of the accomplishments and goals for early childhood in Virginia. We have a lot of content to cover, and so I won't waste any time turning it over to Jenna Conway, the Deputy Superintendent of Early Childhood at the VDOE, who will be taking us through this presentation. Jenna?
Wonderful. Thank you, Erin. Thank you, Chris and Tondo, and all members of the Division of Early Childhood and Care and Education here at the Department of Education. I'm Jenna Conway. I'm our Deputy Superintendent, and I am very excited to spend the next hour with you all highlighting the incredible successes of the early childhood system and sector in Virginia over the last year and noting what's ahead as we look at opportunities for the future. So we'll go section by section through accomplishments and also talk about as we pivot mid-year, as we do every year around the timing of the state fiscal year, talk about what we look forward to in 24-25. We'll talk about access and choice. We'll talk about quality improvement, family engagement, health and safety, and regional capacity and innovation. We'll also talk briefly about next steps at the end. We will make sure to put these slides online so that folks can have them. As Erin noted, it is a lot of information, a lot of data. And so as we're going through it, I'll try to highlight the high level takeaways, but know that you will be able to come to the website afterwards and access this presentation. We'll also try to send it out if we can after that. All right, next slide, please. As we reflect on the year, and it can't believe another year has passed. As many of you know, I have small children, so I often don't acknowledge my own birthday. Their birth dates, which two of which are during the summer, are this reminder of the passage of time. And as we reflect on everybody getting older and our system continuing to evolve, it's always important to come back and remember what our true north is, the true north of our work together. We know that it doesn't matter the name on the outside of the building or the funding source or even the program type, right? That we're all working together to make sure that all kids in the Commonwealth have the opportunity to get to enter kindergarten ready. Some of you may remember me talking a year ago about my youngest child who entered kindergarten in the fall of 23 and just all of the people and places and steps that had been taken to get him ready for kindergarten. And he had a very successful year and he loves school. And we want every child in the Commonwealth to have that opportunity. Unfortunately, we know that that's not true. When we look at the Virginia Kindergarten Readiness Program, which looks at literacy, math, social skills, and self-regulation, we see that 6 out of 10 kids in the Commonwealth come in ready in all 4 of those areas. And 4 out of 10 come in not ready in at least one of those areas. And you'll see that those levels of not ready are higher in literacy and math than in the social skills. But that's a problem. We want to work together collectively across all of the settings that we represent to make sure that every child entering kindergarten has the same opportunities that Paul did a year ago. Next slide, please. We also know that this isn't limited to any area of the state. When we look at each of the 9 ready regions, and so if you let your eyes go to the bottom of the screen here, you'll see each of the 9 ready regions, and the blue dot is the percentage of children who met the benchmark, so the number or percentage of kids that are coming in fully ready. And then the orange dot is the percentage of low-income children who met the benchmark. And what we see is across the state, these numbers vary, right? But there's not any area of the state where 100% of the kids are coming in ready. We also know that we've got a lot of variation, as you see in this chart. And so we see that some places kids are coming in more ready than others. If you look at kind of areas like the capital area. On the other hand, we also know that there's areas like Southwest and West, Southeastern and Chesapeake Bay that are doing a really good job with kids that are coming from low-income households, right? Of kind of having them close. If you look with it where the blue and the orange dot are close, right? Kind of really bringing in kids who are coming from under-resourced backgrounds, more likely to come in ready. But the important takeaway is no matter where you go in the state, we have work to do in terms of making sure all kids, particularly those kids from under-resourced backgrounds, can come into school ready. Next slide, please. We also know, unfortunately, we would like to live in a Commonwealth where no matter your zip code, your race, your background, the language spoken at home, that you have the opportunity to come to school ready. Right now, although 60% of children come to school ready across the Commonwealth, only 50% of our Black students and 45% of our Hispanic students come in ready. We know that our children in low-income households are much less likely to come in ready. The same is true for our multilingual or dual language learners and our children with special needs. And so what we'd want to see is not only overall more kids coming in ready, but that the top bar of the overall would look more similar to the different groups or subgroups of kids that we know we need to serve. This slide also helps think about, we think about who is at greatest risk of not coming to school ready. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of our efforts to intervene here. Who's at greatest risk of coming to school not ready? How do we think about designing our services and working very closely with partners across the Commonwealth to make sure that we're serving these subgroups very well? Next slide, please. But I know that's a little pessimistic way to start off in terms of kind of what our work together. But the key thing, and this is the pivot where we talk about the challenges we face to the opportunity that's in front of us. We know that early childhood makes a huge experience. And we know that it makes a particular experience, right, particularly for our kids for under-resourced backgrounds. So if we don't offer early childhood programming, we know that the single worst factor, right, the sort of kids that are least likely to come to school ready are children from low-income households whose parents report no preschool whatsoever. No Virginia Preschool Initiative, no Head Start, no early Head Start, no childcare, no family childcare. And so that has to be our challenge. We know preschool across these settings in early childhood can make a difference in making sure that we're getting to every child, particularly our children in our under-resourced backgrounds, neighborhoods, and communities. So we also know that it not only matters for when Paul, or whatever the kindergartner is, walks in the school doors on the first day of kindergarten, but we can predict using Virginia data that the kids that come in ready are more likely to be successful in third grade and beyond. This is a bit of a complicated graph, but let me explain. If you look at the different color bars here, the blue and the gray bar are kids that are coming into kindergarten very ready. And what the number shows is of those kids that are coming in ready, and this is just looking at the literacy screener, how many of them are going to be reading on third grade. So those kids in that blue and gray bar, no matter what the experience they receive across kindergarten, first and second grade, if they're coming in very ready, 8 out of 10 of them are going to be reading on level by third grade. And the gray bar, very, very ready, 9 out of 10 of them are going to be reading by the third grade. So it's almost a guarantee, right? A protection if we help kids come in ready. On the flip side, when we look at the yellow bar, what that means is a coin toss, right? So if you come in least ready at the beginning of kindergarten, we'll get just about half of those kids to reading on level, but half will not, right? So think about what a different Virginia it would be if we could get everybody to the blue or to the gray and know, right, at they coming into kindergarten ready, and in return, that nearly all of them will be reading and on level by third grade. And this is just another way to think about the importance of early childhood. We know we can track now using brain imaging and sophisticated science that kids, like babies, are learning, and we're starting to see those emerging cognitive abilities as early as 3 months. We start to see gaps in vocabulary as early as 18 months in terms of the words spoken and the words understood by children. You can predict in the same way I just showed you with that previous graph. You can start to look at 3 and 4-year-olds and know from their vocabulary and their linguistic acquisition whether or not they'll be on track by third and fourth grade. And then we know that third grade tracks very closely with high school graduation. So if we can, as a system, make sure that more kids, not just 6 out of 10, but 10 out of 10 kids in the Commonwealth are coming in ready, we know that that not only makes a difference in the success of their kindergarten year, but in their third grade reading and potentially in their graduation, college, post-secondary, career, and beyond. Next slide, please. We also know that it's not an option for many Virginia families. So not only, if I haven't convinced you in the importance of early childhood, just looking at the data on the difference that it makes for kids, let's remember that all kids are part of families, right? And right now, 2 out of 3 Virginia children under the age of 6 have all available parents in the workforce. Their parents are out going to school, working jobs, working gigs. They cannot be there to care for, support the early learning of their children. They rely on childcare. They rely on family childcare, early Head Start, or preschool. And as you see, even over the last decade or so, you see a pretty significant increase. And this trend, if we go all the way back to the 1960s, is a straight line upward. So not only do we need to think about how we build the strongest possible early childhood system for kids' benefit, but for the broader benefit of parents and families who are pursuing self-sufficiency and greater opportunity for themselves and their children, and for the broader Virginia society and economy. So with that, let's come back to our shared vision for where we want to go. And you probably can guess what I'm going to say here, but we know, and I'm preaching to the converted at this point, like we know how important early childhood is. We also know that we're building a public-private system that's inclusive of a whole lot of different settings. And I'll talk more about that in a minute, whether it's in a family childcare, whether it's in a faith-based, a religious exempt program, whether it's an early Head Start or Head Start, whether it's in a school or in a childcare center run by a nonprofit or a for-profit. We don't care the name on the building or the type of building. What we want to make sure is that families have a variety of affordable, high quality options, and that they can choose the one that makes the most sense for them, for their family, for the age of their child, for the context that they're in. We also know across our 3,000 plus publicly funded programs that everybody can be a little bit better tomorrow than they are today. And by improving interactions and how we're educating children in age and developmentally appropriate ways, we can make a real difference in the experiences that kids are receiving and increase the likelihood that they're going to come in ready and more ready and more ready, as you think back to that literacy chart I showed you. So it's not enough just to come in ready. If we can get you coming in very ready, we're truly positioning you for success in third grade and beyond, all the while making sure that parents, guardians, family can work, go to school, and be able to address their needs. Those are the multiple things that we work towards to make sure that every kid in the Commonwealth has the opportunity to come to school ready. And we do that in a couple of different ways. And as we've unified early childhood care and education out of the home under the Department of Education over the course of the last few years, we've organized ourselves into different areas or goals or objectives that we focus on. So there's a set of us that work very diligently on access and choice, making sure that we're making childcare and early childhood affordable, that we're serving as many kids and families as we can with the limited dollars that we have, and making sure they're making it easier for families to enroll, all the while making sure that it's a fair and level playing field for providers. Another section of us works on quality measurement and improvement, rolling out VQB5, thinking about supports in classrooms, standards, learning, assessment, curriculum, all of the things that go into the learning aspects of our birth to 5 experiences. We know our parents and families and guardians are our children's first and most important educators. And so making sure at every step of our process, health, safety, learning, access, choice, that we're thinking about how we're engaging families to make sure they're at the table and informing our policy and practice. Health and safety, also known as licensing, is really saying we got to make sure for our littlest learners, particularly those babies and toddlers that are nonverbal, that these are safe and healthy settings kind of across the state. And last but not least, we got to continue to think ahead, right? We've done great things in early childhood in Virginia over the last few years, but we won't rest on our laurels. We've got to think about how do we build up the capacity at every level in every corner of the state to support innovation, to support the government getting better at working for and with private providers, right? To building out capacity. We know we still face wait lists. I was talking with elected officials yesterday, right? A mom who's also happens to be a delegate who was like, I finally found a program off a wait list for her 2-year-old, right? We got to figure out how we solve some of those shared challenges, and innovation and working together and also supporting our regions and communities is going to be a big part of that. But what might be the most important shared theme across these areas in which we organize ourselves to work better and more closely with you is about educator compensation. And we know the single biggest issue that still many of you face causes challenges on everything from how many classrooms you can open to how many hours you can offer to just the challenges that you're facing to meet the quality and learning expectations. educators. We know that educators are at the heart of our work, and know we've got to figure out as we grow and strengthen the system, how do we make sure we can compensate and support our educators across the state, because they are the ones who are providing the interactions, using the curriculum, and ultimately making a significant difference in the lives of children in the Commonwealth. So with that, what I'll do for the next 30 minutes or so is just take us through each of the sections or the functional areas. I'll talk about some of the accomplishments. I'll share some of the data for each of these areas, and then I'll wrap each section with our next steps. As a reminder, and for those of you who are joining now, we have over 300 participants across the state, which is really exciting. We will make sure that these slides are available. I know it's a lot of information, so we will make sure that you can get these slides afterwards. Next slide, please. So it was a huge, huge year for early childhood in terms of access, enrollment, and choice. More children than we've ever served before, ever in the history of the Commonwealth with public funds, were served last year in your programs. More than 2,500 children benefited from mixed delivery, a 25% increase from the prior year. More than 23,000 children were in BPI, including nearly 1,000 in childcare settings. Our demand for childcare subsidy just grows and grows and grows, and it's nearly 44,000 children were served with childcare subsidy this year. Some of you heard me talk about this before, and I'll share some data in a moment, but it's up from 20,000 less than 3 years ago, more than doubling the amount of kids in your programs who are benefiting from childcare subsidy. And our Head Start partners and early Head Start partners have worked very hard and diligently since coming back from the pandemic to try to get back to full enrollment, working with the feds to kind of make those adjustments to be able to get their programs back and operational. We know statewide, about 1 in 4 of our birth to 5-year-olds are attending a program that takes public dollars, which means we've truly built out a public-private system that's affecting a vast number of Virginia citizens under the age of 5. This also means we've got more choices than ever before for families. I'm almost tired just reading that slide. I can't even imagine, right, in terms of all of the work that we've done. What is so exciting about this, and what was a little nerve-wracking for a few months over the course of the year, for those of you particularly involved in some of the advocacy work, is we knew that demand from families was higher than it ever before. It kept growing and growing and growing. And yet the timeline on the federal dollars was coming upon us. And we know that those federal dollars were going to go away as of September of 2024. And there was no other relief, financial relief, coming from the federal government. So we worked very closely with a new commission, a bipartisan commission on early childhood care and education. We worked very closely with our Governor Glenn Youngkin, and we worked very closely with the General Assembly this session. And as a result of that work, and truly the advocacy and hearing from the providers across the state, the Virginia General Assembly and Governor made a historic investment in you. They made a historic investment in early childhood. Over $366 million in this year, and over $460 million in FY26. As a point of reference, I looked back recently to the FY 2018 budget. Our total state fund investment was around $75 million. And next year, we're going to be $461 million. So just a significant increase of state elected officials, whether that's at the General Assembly or at the governor's office, who believe in you and the work you're doing. Altogether, that represents a $1.1 billion investment over this 2-year period. We can thank the commission, we can thank the work of the Virginia Promise Partnership, other providers who've stepped up and said, hey, this is why this sector is so important for kids. This is why this sector is so important for families. And this is why this sector is so important for the economy. And that helped lead to the governor's Building Blocks for Virginia Families initiative, which really set us in a great tone going into the legislative session, where he said, we have got to make up the difference and make sure that Virginia doesn't kick any kids or families off the child care subsidy program or any of our publicly funded programs this year. As a result, alongside this, the General Assembly also said we are paying a lot more attention to early childhood. We want the Virginia Department of Education to start to look at wait lists, right? They agreed to fund every slot, but as I'll talk about in a moment, there's not a lot of room for growth, right? Even with all of the $1 billion, that's just to support the system as is. They said, we want you to keep wait lists so we can understand how many more kids and families want these services, are eligible and deserve these services. We want to make it sustainable. And so thinking about reasonable policy changes that enable us to make these dollars go as far as possible. And we want the VDOE to report on all of this, right? So we make sure we're not going to ignore early childhood anymore. We're going to pay attention, and we're going to call on the department on behalf of all of the public and private providers across the state to report that to the General Assembly. That will help make sure that we can maximize every possible dollar and make sure that our elected officials understand if there is still greater demand. You still have families that are on wait lists and want these services and are eligible for them. How do we make sure that our elected officials understand that? So let's talk a little bit about the system that they made the investment in. And some of you might have seen this before, but I think it's really important that we share these are the type of slides and the information that we shared with elected officials. So we helped elected officials understand this wasn't just about preschool, right? That this was about just under 2,000 family child care homes, just under 3,000 licensed child care centers, just under 1,000 public schools, just under 900 faith-based programs, and we've got 50 Head Start and Early Head Start grantees across 364 sites. That this was truly a system that included all of these different types of buildings, leaders, and educators. We also help them understand how much demand is growing for your services in the Commonwealth. And so if you look at this graph, what this shows you is the enrollment over the course of the last few years. The high level takeaway, which I've already shared, is that we've had a dramatic increase, right? 52% compared to where we were pre-pandemic. And that's amazing. That's just amazing as is, but it's particularly extraordinary when you think about the drop that we experienced, right? When you think about those dark, dark days of spring and summer of 2020, where folks were shuttering their doors and closing out, and we couldn't find educators, and parents were pulling out, and you wondered whether or not you'd be able to keep your doors open, right? And keep your business afloat. And so we survived that, and those were brutal times. But what you've done in a way that many K-12 systems have not even done across this country has come back and then some. If you look at where we are, so again, in 2019, across all of our programs, roughly 53,000 kids were served with public dollars. And now you look at this year, 81,269 kids being served with public dollars across your programs. That is just unbelievable. And it's that number and that belief of families, that trust of families in your programs that led to that really significant over $700 million, nearly $800 million state investment in you and your programs. We also know that we've done this at the same time where we've rolled out something big and complicated like VQB5, and you face tremendous workforce shortages and challenges, and yet you've been willing to take public dollars, and we look at the broader capacity, not just the children that are directly served with public dollars, but the programs that take public dollars and how many kids in total are served. So this includes your private paying parents. We know that we have nearly 3,000 private programs that are taking child care subsidy, a historic high, and that across all of those programs and our mixed delivery programs and all these things, that we have over 207,000 children served across these settings. So just impacting so many kids in the Commonwealth. So we also know over the last year, we've been working a lot on coordinated enrollment. So how in the world you get all of these kids, determine that they're eligible, and a huge shout out to all of our local departments of social services that have done great work to help us get to this place. But we also know it can be a maze. It's complicated when you think about the different types of programs that we have and who's eligible for what and what age and what do you have to contribute. And so our Ready Regions continue to work very closely with our public-private mix of programs to think about how do we coordinate enrollment to make it work better for families. We know there's not a one-size-fits-all approach to enrollment, and so we're very pleased that 100% of our Ready Regions are working to figure out how do I assess where we are as a region, plan for coordinated enrollment, and ultimately kind of implement shifts and changes to make enrollment work better for families. And they're doing it in a way that is unique to Chesapeake Bay or Capital Area or Southwest. There's not kind of a prescribed one-size-fits-all approach for the state. We also know that folks are using technology in new and different way. And so the Ready Regions are piloting Bridge Care, which is a technology solution, including a marketplace that helps families go online, find out what's out there, and ultimately looking at ways to do single point of entry all thinking about how do we get more kids into the system, make it as easy as possible for families to understand what is out there, what they're eligible for, and how to apply. So, huge year. More kids than ever before served in public dollars. More providers than ever before, private providers who are willing to take public dollars. And as a result of that, and we'll hope to see the dividends pay off for this in terms of kids coming in to school ready. We also know there's been a lot of work led by our ready regions to coordinate enrollment and to think about as we grow and grow and grow, how do we make this work as well as possible for families, for providers, and for local leaders. So what's next for access and choice? So as you heard, we're very excited about the historic investment in early childhood in Virginia. On the other hand, I have to note that as I sort of said before and want to say again, they funded us to keep us where we were at, right? And if you look at that line graph, that had a kind of a line going up. And what it means is we have to flat line now, right? Like we can stay at the current level. We don't necessarily need to kick kids and families off, but we also can't continue to grow. And when more parents and families come to us, it means we'll need to put them on a wait list. We'll share that information with our elected officials, with the governor and the General Assembly, but we will have wait lists, and we've been working very closely with our partners at the Ready Regions, with our partners at the local departments of social services, vendor relations, and with school divisions to start to think about what happens if we don't have enough funding to serve all of the kids and families that are eligible. We put them on a wait list, and we make sure that we help all of the elected officials and powers that be understand what that unmet parent demand is. We also know we've got to continue to address childcare deserts. We talk with folks across the state, and there's areas where there's simply no options. And so we do that by maintaining our rates at the cost of quality and continuing to look at how do we not only serve as many kids as possible, but also maintain a certain rate per child so that you can compensate your educators at a reasonable rate, so that you can afford to stay in business, and strengthening our navigator program so that we can continue to make sure that if you're at all interested in taking public dollars, that we can work with you to get you licensed or registered, signed up for subsidy, and part of this system. We're going to continue to elevate best practices and look at how we can strengthen coordinated enrollment in a way that makes sense for each region. And then we continue to look at how do we innovate? How can we get more resources? How can we work with chambers of commerce to get businesses and employers to contribute more? Exploring ideas like a digital wallet so we could kind of get philanthropy and business and others to contribute towards the cost of care. But we know that we've got scarce dollars. We feel very confident, as do our elected officials, that you are making every one of those dollars work well for kids and families. But at some point, we know that the parental demand outstrips the available resources, and that'll be the biggest challenge as we go forward next year. All right. Quality improvement. Let's go to the next slide here. So, and also a big year. Not only did we grow in leaps and bounds in terms of the kids we serve, but you all achieved a very successful first year of VQB5, which is our statewide quality measurement and improvement system. We in Virginia believe and care about every single classroom across our system. So I talked about 33 or 3,400 programs, but we focus on the 11,000 classrooms, right? And we call them classrooms, even if you're in family child care or a faith-based setting, we call them classrooms across all of those settings. Every one of those places where children are served, we want to make sure that we recognize them, we give them, educators receive feedback, and we're supporting everybody to be a little bit better tomorrow than they are today. 100% of programs participated last year, and we are on track to make sure that those results will be available to families this fall. Whew. This is just a chart of the stats, but again, 16,000 educators received support through Recognize B5. 16,000 educators, over $40 million. 99% of 11,000 classrooms completed their local observations in the fall, and 100% perfect score in the spring in terms of classroom observations. 80% of you are using an approved curriculum. Guys, it was like 45% for family childcare a few years ago. Look at that growth. 80% of you, no matter where you go in the state, 8 of 10 programs are saying that they're using quality curriculum. 30,000, 29,600 and something Class observations were completed. We talked to people in other states. They can't even believe it. We were under, as I'll share in a moment, we were just under 1,000 a few years ago. And now we have class observations happening in every corner of the state, educators receiving feedback and truly being supported to improve their practice for kids. We've got more than 60 curriculum options, and we're very excited about the new portal that's going to launch this fall. More than 3,000 of you have either participated in a session or filled out a survey or let us know what you like and what you don't like about the web portal. And ultimately, all of that will help make it a better website that represents your programs, that's useful for families, and ultimately tells the story of the extraordinary work happening in early childhood in Virginia. Whew. These are the numbers, just gives you 1 year growth, right? So there it is, 29,693 observations, 11,219 classrooms, 24,300 educators, and just under 4,000 site leaders across 3,700 sites. Guys, this is incredible accomplishment. We wondered a year ago, could we get it done? Could we get to 100%? And we did, and then some. So huge thank you to everybody who was a part of EQB5 last year. We also know that we cover every corner of the state. I insisted on showing this slide to our legislators because I sometimes think, oh, well, I don't have any type of early childhood in my community. But from the Eastern Shore to the very Southwest, to the tip, to the bottom, as you see, blue, orange, red, we have early childhood in every city and county in Virginia. We are truly now a system, right? A system that covers every expanse of the state and that serves our littlest learners no matter where you go in the Commonwealth. So here's what I mentioned is that what growth? And you might say, I'm exhausted. And I remember I had the opportunity to go and speak to some of our folks in the one of the Ready regions after the day, I think after they had completed their observations, and they were excited to see me, but also looked a little weary for all of the work that had gone into the observations. And guys, it was a tremendous amount of work. We look back to when we started, and I think back about some of the early days, some of you might remember where we talked about observing every classroom in the state. And at that time, we were doing about 900 class observations. And people were like, there's just no way. Even though 5 years later, dealing with a global pandemic, dealing with workforce shortages and all sorts of challenges to our sector, inflation, challenge hiring people, you name it, we faced it. And yet we went up to 21,410 local observations were completed by the 9 Ready regions this year. That is just a tremendous accomplishment, an unbelievable rate of growth. No place else in the country is giving that type of feedback and support to all of its educators in public settings across and public sites across settings. So just unbelievable growth, all made possible by the work of Ready regions and all of the folks like you. We also know that those observations speak to a lot of work for center directors and providers, right? Because all of a sudden, not only do you have health and safety coming in, you've got somebody else coming in and multiple times per year, helping your educators understand what they're looking for, why it matters, how to kind of organize that. So it's not just the work on the behalf of the Ready regions, but also on every single site that got observed multiple times this year. As I noted before, 8 out of 10 of you are reporting using curriculum in at least one classroom, and this is just tremendous growth in family child care and centers. No offense to my school-based or Head Start partners, but even when we went into this work, nearly 99% of you were already using curriculum because it was required by your funding sources. But that was not true for childcare and for family childcare. So if you look at what this chart shows us is that in 21-22, so just a few years ago, the blue bar, 29% for family childcare, 26% for centers, shows how many of these programs reported to us that were using curriculum. 1 in 4, right? 1 in 3. As a result of the efforts of Ready regions, of these programs, and the supports provided by Stream and 3 and other curriculum vendors, we see tremendous growth. So 80% of our childcare centers are now reporting using curriculum, and 60% of our family childcare. That is a tremendous uptake. And we know that also means a lot of work for center directors and leaders as you think about how do I not only get a curriculum, procure a curriculum, but support my educators to use it day in, day out, year over year to support the learning of our infants, toddlers, and preschoolers. And this gives a little bit more detail on how we continue to support the learning. So we're up to 70 quality curriculum approved. We've got 4 free or low cost options, including Stream and 3, which is our state option, not a requirement, always a choice, but a lot of resources. And they just launched a really cool mobile friendly website this week. So if you haven't checked that out, worth doing. Go to our curriculum webpage if you have any questions on how to choose or use curriculum, and to think about how do you talk more with your educators about the connection between curriculum and class. We continue to grow VKRP, not only, as I shared before, with all of the kids entering kindergarten, but also make sure it's available for mixed delivery, VPI, and even Head Start programs that have opted in for our 3 and 4-year-olds. We did just over 7,500 kids, 3-year-olds this year, and just under 37,000 4-year-olds. Really exciting to understand where kids are at, how much they're growing, and how do we give that information to educators to support the learning for children. We've done family focus groups because we know it's important for families to understand how their children are being evaluated and how they can support them to come to school more ready. And we'll offer a mid-year screening. We know this is a big deal for Head Start programs that might want to opt into VKRP. You have to have it fall, winter, and spring. And starting next year, we'll be able to make that resource available statewide. We also have our early learning and development standards. We continue to have lots of educators sign up for a micro-credential, right, to deepen their knowledge of what kids should know and be able to do. And if you haven't checked it out recently, I really encourage you to check out the ECE Resource Hub. So a lot of content online as you think about professional development, as you take the information from your classroom observation results this year and think about how to support my educators, a one-stop shop for providers, for programs to think about resources for improvement. And we know that's really important. And we're thinking about how do we support you to also extend and engage to families. So resources to support interaction and learning at home as well. Certainly, last but not least, as we talk about the importance in the quality measurement and improvement system, just huge year for recognized B5. And so we have grown from our first year was 2,000 educators to now, as I said before, 16,000 educators this year. It started as a $2.9 million pilot, more than $40 million supported educators. And when we look at it in total, $80 million. $80 million has gone out directly over the course of the last few years, directly to childcare and family child educators. It is a huge investment in that workforce. And I don't know that there's any other state in the country that has made that type of investment to that many educators over this period of time. We do, however, we go to the next slide, please, some challenges ahead. And again, you'll notice kind of a theme here in terms of a lot of optimism, excitement about how much we've accomplished, but also wanting to be real about some of where we are today and what it means for all of these federal dollars to go away. So with the end of the COVID dollars, we had to go to the General Assembly and say, is there a way for the state to support this program? The great news is that General Assembly said yes, and the General Assembly and the Governor Youngkin, made a $20 million investment in our child care and family child care workforce. And so we'll be able to provide funding this year for Recognized B5. It does mean, however, that the available funding is about half of what it was last year. And so educators will only be eligible for up to $1,500 this year. All other parts of the program will remain the same: who's eligible, how many times you'll be paid, etc. But we'll only be able to provide $1,500 this year. The other challenge is that there's no current sort of state or federal funding available for Recognized B5 and FY26. So there will not be any sort of incentives available in not this year, but next year, which is called fiscal year 26, or just think of it as the 25-26 school year. So we know we wanted to kind of make sure that we made everybody informed of this. So if you didn't receive a letter or you haven't heard about this, please check out the website. We sent a change to everybody we thought that might be eligible or that had registered on July 8th so that they would know about the changes to the program. But please check out that website if you were not aware of this. So again, very exciting that the General Assembly and Governor stepped up and are carrying the program forward this year, but this would be the last year unless something else changes in the future. Okay, wrapping up quality improvement. So where do we go from here? Well, we've got lots of excitement still to come with VQB5. So we're verifying data right now. We're working with private providers to prepare for the public release of this information in the fall. We want to make sure there are no surprises. So we'll work very closely with your Ready Regions and you so that you understand what's coming when, what will be out there about your program, and we can highlight the incredible work happening across the state. We're going to talk a lot about data this year. We're going to work with our Ready Regions. We're going to work with our improvement partners. We're going to work with everybody to make sure that we're getting this information out, helping everybody understand. In turn, we hope to help you so you can talk with your educators about it, talk with your folks locally about it, think about who provides professional development at your site and how do you engage them in the information about classrooms, about curriculum, about kids as appropriate. We're also building out Virginia Connects or VA Connects, which is helping to connect the back end of LinkB5, VKRP, and our literacy screener. So particularly for those in schools, really making it a more seamless interface, making it easier to kind of use our system and then to kind of follow the kids as they go through the system to support their learning. We are working very closely both with our learning and our quality measurement and improvement teams on how do we support folks to improve. A real priority will be those programs that are don't meet expectations or are sort of in need of support, and we'll make sure that they are the top priority, getting resources to them to improve the experiences that kids are receiving, but also through that resource hub, making sure it's readily available to everybody. What are the resources you need to succeed to support your educators? We'll release the profiles this fall. And then again, we're going to support you through these Recognize B5, make sure that we run a very smooth shop for Recognize B5 this year. All eligible educators are registered and can participate, and also working with our providers to figure out how do we get the rates, how do we support you to get to competitive compensation so that you can attract and retain the talented workforce you need to be successful in your site. Family engagement. Let's keep moving through here. So as I said before, children are parents are children's first and most important educators. So we've done a lot of listening this year, and the Ready Regions have also really stepped up their practices around family engagement. So we did roundtable discussions and truly and deeply engaged families across the state in every Ready Region and statewide virtually in fall 2023, and really heard from families on what they like, where there are challenges. You can guess what the big issue is, right? They still need more childcare to inform how we think about our work going forward. More than 8,000 families completed a survey, and that's helped us work on the childcare subsidy program, make it work better for kids and families and providers. And we know that we engage families when we thought about evaluating mixed delivery, and that's a program that's grown a lot and really making sure that it continues to work for families. We also supported the Virginia Promise Partnership Parent Advisory Group, and so really exciting. There was a pep rally here in Richmond yesterday, and just talking with parents who come from all corners of the state to speak directly to elected officials and others about the importance of early childhood, affordable, quality early childhood help puts their kids on track for success, makes for a better society, and nothing is more powerful for legislators and for elected officials than hearing from parents. We know that we now have a family council in every Ready Region, so you may or may not be familiar with this, but we wanted to make sure that there's a formal mechanism no matter where you went in the state. So we have 9 family councils, every Ready Region across the state. The Ready Regions make sure that they're part of the mixed delivery conversations, coordinated enrollment, the family survey, VQB5. They also know that they have to respond to what the families want to go, right? So a part of it is what are the things that are coming from the state that go to the council, and where is the council taking itself in terms of the priorities for the families within that region. The Ready Regions continue to try out lots of different approaches. They tried out text messaging. They do sort of targeted in-person events, like all different ways to meet families where they're at and make sure that they're at the table and shaping policy and practice as we go forward. We also are piloting Bridge Care, which is, again, sort of every mom or dad or guardian has a phone or a tablet right now, and looking at how do we, with this generation of parents, smartly use technology to get them connected, keep them engaged, and support their learners in childcare or other early childhood experiences. We know we've worked a lot on building more family resources for VQB5. So in the beginning, we were really focused on just supporting you, the providers, to understand what it is, why it matters, and what it meant for you and your educators. as we reach statewide scale and we are no longer private or in a practice year, we realized it was really important to get resources to families so they understand why these people are coming into the classrooms. What's this website about? What is this VQ, BQ, whatever it might be, right? And why does it matter for me as a parent of a 3-year-old or a 3-month-old? And so we've built out a bunch of resources, and we'll do a lot of work with you this fall to make sure that we can support families to understand what this is, why it matters, and how it's affecting the programs that they're sending their kids to. Okay, what's next for family engagement? So again, we will continue to focus on families in every aspect of our work. A lot of that will be led by the Ready Regions and their family councils, making sure that those families are shaping the strategy, our mission and vision as we go forward, and that we're doing statewide efforts like surveys to continue to gauge that information. We're really excited about the new website for VQB5, but we also know we'll launch it and then everybody will let us know like what doesn't work for them. And that's great. We appreciate that feedback, and we'll work over the course of the year to make it work better for families, right? So they can understand about quality and why that matters. And we know that with all of these letters, VKRP, VQB5, FALS, PALS, like a lot of it is confusing for families. And so looking at how do we strengthen the resources we provide online that we make available to you. How do we make sure they're available in other languages? How are we sort of sensitive to the needs? What might parents of infants want or children with special needs? Making sure that we're kind of constantly building out and improving these resources so that you can also put those in the hands of families as well. Moving right along, we've got health and safety, a lot of work in this area. So this is our Office of Child Care, Health and Safety, formerly known as licensing. In the last year, they completed over 14,000 inspections at licensed and unlicensed but regulated child day programs. We responded to 1,100 complaints. And so we know that the vast majority of you do incredible work with kids in terms of health and safety, but we do have some folks who aren't following the rules, and making sure that we can quickly deploy, get out there, investigate so that it doesn't affect the perception of all of the programs that are doing great work by kids. And we had about 150 investigations in response to those that folks who need to be registered or licensed or need to be serving fewer children. And so again, we know that that's also can be a challenge in terms of you have to charge a certain rate because you're meeting all of these health and safety standards. And then if somebody down the road isn't following the rules, making sure that we're responsive and get there to help them understand the rules that they need to follow if they want to continue to operate. We've also increased our supports for the field. We've covered background checks for another year, and we'll do that through June 2025, knowing that you already face so many challenges in the workforce. We've worked on the provider portal to make it easier for you to get your license, file for a background check. You know, that still needs work, but working on that. We've updated the subsidy orientation training for unlicensed centers and homes, the child care aware. We revised the statement of exemption for some of our programs that are exempt from licensing to make that process more streamlined and easy to complete. And we continue to work with the community college workforce to make sure that for some of the health and safety training, like, for example, the daily health observation, that we are making that available, high quality, and not only available in English, but is in Spanish as well to better support your efforts to increase health and safety practices at your programs. We have a couple of big announcements in terms of revised policies and law, two important ones that are now in effect because it's after July 1st. The first is the provisional hire law, which was passed this year. What this means is that you now have the permission to hire somebody once you have the FBI background check fingerprint results. You can hire them provisionally. They still need to be supervised by somebody who has a full background check, but you don't have to wait for every aspect of our multi-step background check before they can begin to work. Previously, they had every aspect of the background check had to be done before they could even begin to work or train. So you can train people, you can have them in classrooms, they can count towards ratios. Once you have that national fingerprint results, as long as they are supervised by somebody who does have the background checks. Once you get back all of the required background checks, then the same applies. They can, they don't have to be supervised anymore, but that's a huge shift, a bipartisan effort. I think we had worked with the field to bring this forward 3 years in a row and had not been successful. And 2024 was our year, and we got that passed. So you should expect emails from Assistant Superintendent Jeff Williams and others with this information. Don't hesitate to reach out to your inspector if you have questions, but really wanting to give you some necessary flexibility. About 15 other states have this, so it's allowable under federal law and giving you that flexibility as well. The state budget also allows to continue the kind of the increase in staff to child ratio. So if you want to, and you're in good standing, and you are in the licensed child day center, or you participate in child care subsidy or mixed delivery, you can go up by 1 per child for groups of birth to 5 and 2 for groups of school age children. And so there's a simple form you fill out, we make sure you're in good standing, and then you have that continued flexibility. About 300 or so, 300, 400 programs are using that. So not everybody, but we know it's important. And some of you have put that in place just in case there's a day when someone's not there or you need a little bit more flexibility. And that is what we're trying to do, is sort of strike a balance of keeping kids healthy and safe, but also providing you flexibility, particularly with some of the workforce challenges that you're facing. As we move forward, we've got some exciting work in the upcoming year about the revising the child care center regulations. So we convene a work group in December of 2021. They met for over a year, hours and hours, to create a revised top to bottom version of our child care center regulations. They took that to the Early Childhood Advisory Committee and then the board as a NORA. We got about 550 comments from over 200 commenters. We've made a lot more edits to the regs. We took them back to the ECAC in May, and then later this month, we'll take it to the board for first review, final review this fall, and then there'll be another opportunity for public comment before these go into effect. So again, wanting to work very closely with providers every step of the way. And please note to be looking for an announcement from Jeff Williams and team at some point this fall to say this is the opportunity to provide a final kind of public comment on the revised regulations, which are meant to be streamlined, more clear, reflect the best practices. And again, note that we've had providers at the table every step of the way in this process. So where do we go for here? So the big focus for us is the revised regulations. And so making sure we're taking this to the board this month, again this fall, and then getting those out for public comment because we want to hear from you. We are also working to implement some of the new state laws that are required. So the one that requires some of you to have EpiPens on premises, even if there's not a child with a diagnosis, just in case a kid experiences a food or other allergen-related incident and you need the EpiPen there for the first time that they have it. So we're working very closely with VDH to implement that law. Lots of questions there. We'll be creating a task force to engage some of you as part of that process. As I said before, working on our licensing technology. It's got to work better for you, got to work better for us. Obviously, we do a lot of work, think about 14,000 inspections a year. So it's hard to fix a system while running a system, but really working to make some improvements to Dolphin and to the systems that we use, those tablets we use when we inspect your programs over the course of the year, and then a real focus on improving our pre-service training. So there's listening sessions this summer. You should have seen the email from Jeff and team, but please, if there's things we can do better with the pre-service, with the training, please come. Our only agenda is to hear from you on what is working and what is not, right? And so we think it's important that there's a bare minimum in terms of the pre-service training that educators and folks in centers receive. On the other hand, we really want to hear from you. We know that there's lots of aspects of this that are not working for you. If we hear from you, that will help us improve that, recompete this, and make better resources available when you think about what it takes to get all of your staff trained up, particularly with the turnover rates you're facing, to understand the health and safety regulations so that you get fewer deficiencies and that your program runs more smoothly. So please, if you have a chance to attend one of those listening sessions, strongly encourage you to do that. Or if you got strong feelings and you want to send myself or Jeff an email about pre-service, please feel free to do that. We take all of that feedback and are using that to improve pre-service training in response to a law that came from Delegate Wilt this year. Okay, last but not least, in just about 5 minutes, I'll wrap us up with regional capacity and innovation. So as I said before, we have really tried to be intentional about making sure that there's certain things that we're making consistent for the state from here in Richmond, but also that a lot of the work to shape the direction that you go in as a local system across your public-private mix with your educators and your families is regionally determined, right? Because that is who is closest to kids, to families, and educators. So we are so excited to have our Ready regions fully established statewide, engaging 100% of programs as part as VQB5, building relationships with all of our programs, acting as the on-the-ground leaders for these efforts, getting all of those class observations done and working closely with you to accomplish that achievement, supporting coordinated enrollment and this dramatic growth in access, as well as pivoting now and preparing to support some of the work around waitlist. And then, as I talked about earlier, deeply engaging families in each area of the state to help shape policy and practice. We know that there's a couple of highlights and innovation here. So as I talked about before, building better data systems and backend so that it's easier for you to use these systems and easier for us to use this information to support your improvement. We've hired navigators. We heard it can be a really complicated process to understand what you need to do from a health and safety perspective and what you need to do to sign up for subsidy and how do you get all those things in place. And so hiring provider navigators here at the department to make it easier to navigate those different systems to make sure we can include and engage more private providers than we've ever done before. And thinking about how do we support a little bit what I talked about before with the pre-service training, but how do we support you when and I've heard people say directly, it's just not the same set of early childhood teachers that I was hiring a few years ago. I'm hiring people who might have less of a background and less experience. And how do I quickly get them to a place where they can be successful in a classroom? Part of that's about health and safety. Part of that's about learning. And so we're very excited that we've been able to pilot in partnership with VECF this last year, the Early Educator Fast Track Initiative, and just trying to figure out what's the right content. How do we recruit educators? What does it take in terms of compensation? Lots of learning along the way. Huge thanks to everybody who's been a part of that, but really thinking about how do we support you from soup to nuts around the workforce challenges that you're facing. And where do we go from here? So as I said before, a real emphasis on using all of this data, all of the information that we're gathering in these more modern systems to support folks at the regional level. How do I share with an elected official what they need to know? How do I share with my childcare providers what they need to know? How do I think about the workforce issues? Really building that capacity so every aspect of our system is using information effectively. Making sure we're continuing to support our providers to stay licensed or registered or part of subsidy program, even with the challenges we faced, as well as bring on new providers. Continuing to support our ready regions. They'll be up for recompetition this year. The law requires us every couple of years to make sure that we do this via a competitive process. And so working to support any entity that would want to be a ready regions, as well as our 9 entities right now to reapply, and then continuing to sort of seek how can we bring in more resources. We know, as I noted before, between some of the challenges around wait lists for programs and limited resources for recognized B5, we need more resources. And so we here at the department continue to work with all of our state partners to see, can we bring in any more dollars? And there's anything else we can apply for? Is there any philanthropic grant we can get to bring more resources to bear on the incredible work that you're doing here in the Commonwealth? Okay, it's a lot. We took an hour. I thought we would. We wondered. Huge thanks to Tandra and Chris and Aaron for keeping us moving throughout all of this. But what can you do from here? So one, you probably just like, I just needed a little time to digest all this information. That's great. That's true. We'll make sure to get these slides and would encourage you to share the highlights that you think are most important with your staff or your families or whom, or your constituents. If you are not signed up, we need you to sign up for Readiness Connection. It is really important. If you want the new information about health and safety, about VQB5, about Recognized B5, make sure you're signing up for the things you need to sign up for. You're aware of all the shifts and changes. You got to sign up. We're over 16,000 subscribers. We get a weekly report on how many people open, so we can see if you open or not. But it's huge, and we're really excited. That is the place to go to get all of your information for early childhood in Virginia. Make sure you're also connected to your Ready region. If you're thinking about becoming a publicly funded provider or you need to know more, really important you connect to your Ready region. If you click here, it'll link to them. And then it's hard to imagine because we just finished this year, but August 15th, less than a month, we are opening up registration for VQB5 for 24-25. It'll be August 15th to October 1st, required for publicly funded programs. If you haven't participated and you want to this year, we encourage you to come and join us. So connect with that Ready region and come and join us. But that will be here in less than a month. So with that, it is 12 o'clock. I know what it is a big deal for 300 plus folks to join us from across the state. So I will wrap us with a thank you. As a parent and as a just a person in the Commonwealth, this is just such an exciting moment for early childhood. More kids than ever before are being served, more providers are part of a system, more educators are receiving feedback, and you are truly making a difference in the lives of Virginia children, as well as supporting the thriving Virginia economy. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And we look forward to the year ahead. Thanks all. Have a great day.